Voice cloning scams. The phone rang at an unremarkable time on a Tuesday afternoon. For Jennifer DeStefano, an Arizona mother, the next few seconds would dismantle her understanding of reality. She picked up, expecting a telemarketer or a neighbor. Instead, she heard screaming. Not generic screaming, specific, terrifyingly familiar screaming. It was her 15-year-old daughter, Brianna. "Mom, these bad men have me," the voice sobbed, the inflection cracking in exactly the way Brianna's voice cracked when she was in distress. Then a man's voice took over. Cold, demanding, threatening to drug her daughter and drop her in Mexico unless DeStefano paid a ransom. DeStefano didn't doubt the call for a second. The terror was absolute. She was ready to liquidate her life to save her child. But Brianna wasn't in a van bound for the border. She was safe on a ski trip, completely unaware that her voice had just been weaponized against her mother. This was not a magic trick. It was not a high-end Hollywood production. It was a deployment of accessible consumer-grade machine learning, a kidnapping synthesized from a few seconds of audio likely scraped from a social media clip. We are standing at the precipice of a new era of fraud. One where the biological markers of identity, the timbre, pitch, and cadence that make you you, have been decoupled from your body. This is the investigation of voice cloning, the technology, the economy, the victims, and the hidden costs of the synthetic voice revolution. To understand how a mother can be paralyzed by a synthetic ghost, we must strip away the mystique of artificial intelligence and look at the engineering under the hood. For the ethical technologist, this is where the fascination turns to dread. The technology powering these scams isn't the clunky robotic text-to-speech (TTS) of the early 2000s. We have moved beyond concatenation synthesis, where pre-recorded words were glued together like a ransom note made of magazine clippings. We are now in the age of neural audio synthesis, specifically dominated by architectures like RVC, retrieval-based voice conversion, and VALL-E. RVC is particularly potent because it doesn't just read text. It acts as a prosthetic skin for audio. It works on a non-parallel conversion method. In the past, to clone a voice, you needed hours of paired data, the target speaker reading specific lines that the computer already knew. RVC bypasses this. It uses a retrieval mechanism to map the content features of a source voice, the scammer speaking into a microphone, onto the timbre features of the target voice, the victim's daughter. The process involves a soft VC encoder that extracts the linguistic content, what is being said, while stripping away the original speaker's identity. Then, a generative adversarial network, GAN, or a diffusion model reconstructs that audio using the target's acoustic profile. The result is terrifyingly low latency. A scammer can speak into a headset, and the software, running on a standard gaming GPU, can output the victim's voice in near real time. This is the democratization of deception. You do not need a server farm to run these models. You need a GitHub repository, a decent graphics card, and a few seconds of clean audio. The barrier to entry for high-fidelity audio fraud has collapsed. We are seeing the proliferation of voice conversion web UIs on open-source platforms, tools built by hobbyists for singing synthesizers or memes, now repurposed by organized crime rings. The code is agnostic. It does not care if it is being used to make a pop star sing a folk song, or to convince a grandmother that her grandson is in a jail cell. If the Jennifer DeStefano case was a targeted strike, the broader landscape is a carpet bombing. The Civic Monitor looks at the data and sees a systemic failure of verification infrastructure. In 2024, the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, and security firms like McAfee reported a staggering rise in these incidents. One study suggested that 1 in 4 adults has now encountered an AI voice scam, with losses totaling millions. But the most chilling evolution is the scale. We are moving from retail fraud, one scammer calling one victim, to wholesale fraud. Consider the case of the Hong Kong multinational firm that lost $25.6 million in early 2024. This was not a panicked phone call. It was a sophisticated multi-layered reality distortion field. An employee in the finance department received a message from the company's UK-based chief financial officer regarding a secret transaction. Suspicious, the employee requested a video call. When he logged into the video conference, he saw the CFO. He saw other colleagues he recognized. They were talking, nodding, and interacting, but the employee was the only real human on that call. Everyone else was a deepfake, video and audio synthesized in real time or pre-rendered to perfection. The scammers had scraped enough public footage of the executives to build digital puppets. They used deepfake video combined with high-fidelity voice cloning to create a consensus reality that didn't exist. The employee, convinced by the visual and auditory evidence of his superiors, authorized 15 transfers totaling over $200 million Hong Kong dollars. This incident shattered the seeing is believing doctrine. It proved that enterprise-grade security protocols, multi-person verification, video confirmation are no longer sufficient. The attackers didn't hack the bank's firewall, they hacked the human trust layer. The grandparent scam has also been industrialized. Criminal networks are using automated scraping bots to trawl social media. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, harvesting audio from unsuspecting teenagers. They tag these voice prints with metadata: young male, American accent, mentions grandma. When a target list is acquired, often from dark web data dumps of senior citizens' phone numbers, the attack is automated. The AI generates the script. Grandma, I'm in trouble. I hit a car. I'm in jail. The synthesis engine reads it in the grandchild's voice. The success rate is significantly higher than traditional cold calls because the biological authentication, the voice, bypasses the brain's skepticism centers. While scammers use these tools for theft, a different kind of theft is occurring in the creative industries. For the displaced creative, voice cloning is not just a security threat, it is an existential one. The voice actor's instrument is their livelihood. It is the product of years of training, breath control, and emotional labor. But in the eyes of a generative model, a voice is just a data set, a collection of frequencies and formants to be tokenized. The strike by SAG-AFTRA video game performers in 2024 highlighted this battle. The central sticking point was the definition of a digital replica. Studios wanted the right to use AI to generate voices for unnamed characters, or to use a lead actor's voice for future DLC, downloadable content, without bringing them back into the booth. The actors saw the writing on the wall. If you sell the rights to your voice print, you are training your replacement. This is the commodification of identity. We are seeing contracts that include clauses for simulation rights, effectively owning the actor's vocal likeness in perpetuity. A voice actor might be paid for a 4-hour session today, but that session provides enough data to generate thousands of hours of dialogue tomorrow. The labor is severed from the laborer. In Tennessee, the legislative response has been the Elvis Act, ensuring likeness, voice, and image security, which went into effect on July 1, 2024. It is the first legislation in the United States to explicitly add voice as a protected property right, shielding artists from unauthorized AI cloning. It's a landmark attempt to update the right of publicity for the algorithmic age. But the law is a patch on a leaking dam. The internet has no borders. A server in a jurisdiction with lax IP laws can host the model that clones a Nashville singer, and the distribution can happen on decentralized platforms that are immune to takedown notices. The psychological toll on creatives is immense. Imagine discovering a YouTube channel where your voice, your unique sonic signature, is reading hateful manifestos, violent erotica, or simply bad advertising copy for a crypto scam. You didn't say those words, but your biology did. The displaced creative is fighting for the right to own the acoustic vibrations that leave their own body. Amidst the panic over fraud and the fight for labor rights, there is a silent, hulking cost that often goes ignored. The eco-conscious observer asks, what does a fake voice cost the planet? We often speak of AI as cloud computing, a term that evokes weightlessness and vapor. But the cloud is concrete, steel, copper, and water. It is comprised of hyperscale data centers that consume energy with voracious appetite. Generative audio is computationally expensive. While text generation, like a chatbot, processes tokens, audio synthesis requires the generation of complex waveforms at sample rates of 24,000 to 48,000 times per second. The environmental impact is split into two phases: training and inference. Training is the headline grabber. Training a massive model like VALL-E or the foundational models behind 11 Labs requires thousands of GPUs running at full tilt for weeks or months. This emits tons of carbon dioxide. But the training happens once. Inference is the hidden giant. Inference is the actual usage. Every time a scammer generates a "help me mom" clip, every time a gamer generates a funny voice line for a mod, the model must infer the audio. This happens millions of times a day. Research indicates that generative tasks are significantly more energy-intensive than discriminative tasks, like Google search. A traditional search query might cost 0.003 kilowatt-hours. A generative AI query can cost 30 to 40 times that. Then there is the water. Data centers generate immense heat. To keep the servers from melting, they use evaporative cooling towers. It is estimated that a typical generative AI exchange, like a short conversation or audio generation, effectively drinks a small bottle of water. Roughly 10 to 50 milliliters of water is consumed, evaporated, to cool the hardware for that specific task. When we look at the industrial scale of voice cloning scams, millions of robocalls, millions of attempts, we are looking at a massive, unnecessary expenditure of potable water and electricity. We are burning fossil fuels and draining aquifers to facilitate fraud. The scammer in the basement is not just stealing money, they are participating in a carbon-heavy industry. The environmental footprint of 1 million grandparent scam calls is a measurable ecological toxicity, adding a layer of material damage to the social harm. The response from the tech giants and regulators has been a game of catch-up. OpenAI, aware of the catastrophic potential of their voice engine, held back its wide release, implementing strict red teaming and watermarking protocols. They require active consent and have banned the use of the tool for impersonation without verification. However, the ethical technologist knows that security through obscurity is dead. The open source community has already replicated the capabilities of these proprietary models. RVC is open code. You cannot put the genie back in the bottle by restricting API access to one corporate tool when the architecture is available on Hugging Face. The Consumer Reports investigation into voice cloning tools found glaring holes in safety nets. While some platforms like Descript required the user to record a consent statement in their own voice to unlock cloning features, others were little more than open guns. They allowed users to upload any file and clone any voice with a simple checkbox saying, "I have the rights to this." A barrier about as effective as an "I am 18" button on a pornography site. The FTC's voice cloning challenge and the proposed bans on impersonation fraud are necessary legal frameworks, but they face an enforcement nightmare. How do you police a scammer operating out of a jurisdiction that doesn't recognize U.S. law, using a decentralized open-source tool paid in untraceable cryptocurrency? We cannot uninvent this technology. The algorithms that map the human voice are here to stay. Therefore, we must adapt our society to survive in a world where hearing is no longer knowing. The solution is not just technical, it is sociological. We must move to a zero-trust model for telecommunications. Just as we learn not to click on links in suspicious emails, we must learn not to trust the voice on the phone. We need to normalize safe words for families, a verbal password that proves identity. If your daughter calls screaming, you ask for the safe word. If the voice cannot provide it, it is a synthesis. This is a tragic but necessary update to the social contract of parenting. For the ethical technologist and the civic monitor, the technical path forward lies in provenance. We need standards like C2PA, Coalition for Content Provenance and Authenticity, applied to audio. Microphones and recording software need to cryptographically sign the metadata of a recording at the point of capture. This creates a chain of custody for the file. If an audio clip lacks this digital signature, or if the signature is broken, it should be flagged as potentially synthetic. Platforms like X, Facebook, and TikTok must implement content credentials that display the origin of the media. For the displaced creative, we need legal frameworks that go beyond copyright. Your voice is a biometric identifier, like your fingerprint or iris. The unauthorized synthesis of your voice should be treated as identity theft and biometric assault, not just copyright infringement. The Elvis Act is the first step, but this needs to be federal and international. For the eco-conscious observer, we must demand transparency on the inference costs of these models. Companies deploying generative AI should be required to report the water and carbon intensity of their API calls. If high-fidelity voice synthesis is expensive to the planet, that cost should be visible, potentially taxed, or regulated to prevent frivolous waste. The era of the unauthenticated voice is over. We have entered a time where the most intimate human connection, the sound of a loved one, the performance of an artist, can be counterfeited with terrifying precision. The Jennifer Stefanos of the world are the canaries in the coal mine. The $25 million Hong Kong heist is the proof of concept for corporate warfare. This technology offers miracles, giving a voice back to those with ALS, breaking down language barriers with real-time translation. But without immediate material guardrails, it threatens to dissolve the glue of trust that holds our families, our economy, and our reality together. We must build a new immune system for the information age, one that verifies the human behind the signal.